Someone is asking for us to deepen a little into those topics about the new aurora. And they are asking also for us to expand the concept about park, because Figueira, we have said that Figueira should be a park. What is called a park is a place of pioneering beings. Pioneer, Pioneering beings are those who pave the way for into what is unknown. They are those who seek to enter unexplored areas of the consciousness. And these pioneers, who would be the inhabitants of a park, those try to relate with energies and fires that are latent in human evolution, trying to manifest. As new times are being prepared, therefore, a new stage for humanity, parks are necessary, groups of pioneering beings, of beings who live to open unknown ways, rather than for confirming routines and schemes and structures that up to now have been in vigor, in place. In general, these groups of pioneers are very much harassed by evolutionary forces which try to penetrate with common life and try to bring to the midst of these pioneers daily problems, life problems, and this is inconceivable in a park. So these beings should be completely turned to what is unknown. Therefore, they are beings who are not seeking confirmations or security. In other words, it is an environment, something in which no one knows where they are. What they know is that in that place something is being built in the consciousness, but for humanity, for all. In such a place, and with beings open and willing in this way, certain energies can manifest themselves so that they may reach humanity in a closer way, certain energies that in common life cannot descend, cannot flow, because the rhythms are the old ones. The commitments are the karmic ones, family bonds, economic bonds, financial bonds, psychological relationships, all this old thing which is inconceivable in a park. So, therefore, in order for us to be able to say that Figueira should be a park, we have to be open to the unknown, willing to become accustomed not to know where we are heading. So it's the opposite of stability. It's the opposite of saying, this is like that, I live like that, I have this regular life. It's the opposite of that. This does not allow us to create this environment, this atmosphere, and does not allow this energy to flow. This is a kind of channel, a kind of greenhouse, like a plant greenhouse, but for divine life to flow, to emerge, for divine life to penetrate. But these pioneers have certain tasks, such as stimulating in themselves, allowing in themselves that the energy work may be fulfilled. It's not them doing exercises so that the energy may work. They should allow the energy to work in them. We know that nerves and glands are responsible, right, for our working in a certain sense and plan. These pioneers should discover the way to be under an energy that is neither from the nerves or the glands. In other words, they are not led, they are not maintained by the nervous system and the gland system, because both nervous system and the gland system have a different action to be manifested. Therefore, what we call a pioneer in this sense is one in whom the nervous system and the gland system, especially two glands, the pituitary and the pineal gland, are beginning to have a future activity because these two glands are a little mysterious. Everything that is said about them or everything that is known about them is just a little part of what they represent and what they work and how they work. A pioneer being, therefore, a being that lives in the park, they must be with these perspectives, not human perspectives, normal human perspectives. They must have this perspective of their nervous system, of their endocrine system, so that they may be working in a way that the body, the physical etheric material may be gradually becoming more and more subtle so that these glands, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, may be totally oriented for the conscious center, the right conscious. Today we have a nervous current that goes on the right side of the body, another nervous current that goes on the left side of the body, and this merges in the head. This is known, and when it merges with nervous currents, this is considered the apex of a certain nervous work in our body. Now, if we are living normally, in other words, if life things are integrated in this circuit from the material point of view, from the psychological point of view, then this union in the head does not go beyond what has happened up to today. And the pituitary gland and the pineal gland in the physical body and in their etheric part cannot accomplish the new work, the work that should be introduced, which afterwards will lead to the development of the right conscious, which is not inside the body and is not physical. So the pineal gland, with its secretions, etheric, non-physical secretions, has the possibility to help in the fusion of the bodies of the personality, of this nucleus that we call the energy of the personality with the energy of the soul. So this is not only a physical problem, this is an energy problem. And this pineal gland that is on top of the head can gradually solve. there is a part of the secretion of this pineal gland that concerns the formation of the right brain center, which is not physical. So this pineal gland needs to be in a certain activity, which is subtle. It must be stimulated to collaborate, to help in this fusion of the personality with the soul so that it may produce, it may lead this other secretion, this other side of its secretion, which facilitates our contact with the subtle planes, the inner planes. So our contacts, conscious contacts, our contacts with the inner planes also depend on a certain activity of the pineal gland, which is not developed yet because we are not in a pioneer attitude in, in the face of what human evolution presents to us from now on. As for the pituitary gland, which is between the eyebrows, we know that it has a role in the integration of the personality, right? And also that it sustains our subjective life and gives it the possibility for us to have a contact with this subjective life. So much so that when we have a vision of the of, of subtle visions, as in the center, ajna center, because of the subtle secretion of the pituitary gland on the etheric plane, not in the physical plane. We are not saying deep inner planes because that can only be fostered by the soul. We are talking about subtle contacts of you with your ajna center, of you with your pituitary gland to be able to impel or have visions or a relationship with subtle planes, with the etheric plane, with the astral plane, or with the mental plane. Now, this pituitary gland has served for this up to now. This will influence in our contacts, in our supramental context, if this is developed, if this enters a pioneer work. Now, these glands and this nervous system will continue to develop and unfold what it has developed and continue as it is if we do not have this conscious and pioneer consciousness. This will develop or expand its work if we are in this pioneering attitude. In other words, if we are completely liberated from all that which is the structure that limits this development, and if we are quite open, quite available for the counterpart of these circuits. There is an activity of what is called spinal nerve. And this activity of the spinal nerve is also more or less concrete according to our attitude, according to our availability for these transformations. Very little is known about the activity of this spinal nerve. Very little is known. And we gradually participate in this in a more conscious way, or we allow the spinal nerve to have a different activity, a different action, if we have this pioneering spirit among the from the nerves and glands we would go move on to the immaterial nerves and start reacting and having a relationship and a work that is no longer material and physical, but in the gland system, we would have a contact with the subtle counterpart, which is invisible, of these nerves and glands. But in order for this process to transcend the nervous activity and the gland activity, we have to have dedication and a lot of love for the pioneer spirit. The pioneer spirit, or this idea of being pioneers, this is quite broad, and we have to deal with this in a quite investigative way. We have to seek what it means to us to come out of what is common and entering this pioneering state. On top of the head, there is a union of these energies, which is symbolically corresponded to the Golgotha. Golgotha, that mount which was climbed carrying a cross. It happens as if the top of the head, what happens in the head, were this region of the Golgotha, all this set of forces and secretions in the material plane and also in the subtle plane that converge to that, so that we can climb this mount. If we do not have a pioneering spirit, if we are not dedicated to what is new, to the right conscious, we will confirm ourselves and reconfirm ourselves on these mental planes that are analytical, these concrete mental planes that are deductive of research. When this on top of the Golgotha, on the top of this mount, on the top of the head, if you have taken your matter to that, your consciousness to that place, then there a completely new activity starts. The nuclei of energy that used to comprise these glands, pituitary and pineal gland, that were good for this, these nuclei will be to a great extent connected to a different center information in us, which is the right conscious center. And precisely the brain center, which is important to us in this spark, and which is important in this new aurora, this right brain center is fundamental because not only does it gather our capacity for us to integrate with the consciousness of the soul, but it also opens the doors for us to be in contact, consciously speaking, with the subtle planes. While it is not like this gland system as the right brain center, it goes way beyond these subtle planes. This right brain center has the capacity to connect us with the extraplanetary consciousness. So, this new aurora of being is this change, and these pioneers that need a park for them to develop, they need an environment, they need a place that can be in the material plane, in the material world, but it's not the material world. So, into this park, into this environment, into this area that is reserved to a dedication so that all this may take place, we really would really have to leave outside all that which is not that and be in the park, be in this state of consciousness, to be in this quest, to be in this work, literally disconnected from all that is not that, all that is not this, all that which represents the old scheme, the old way. It is very important that we may achieve this energy anchored in us all, because all those who sincerely seek to be pioneers, all those who have offered for this translation of this gland and nerve system to expand from the physical plane to the subtle plane, and not only from the gland and nervous system point of view, we may feel in the physical effects in the glands, but also that we may really be experiencing, we may really be entering into contact with these subtle planes and may be feeling the effects of the union of this nucleus of the personality, which is the old world, what is old and must be transcended, with this other nucleus, the soul, so that this right, right brain center may enter development in another rhythm. This pioneering work is quite mm, affected by the evolutionary forces. And those forces, if you are attuned with this part, if you are attuned with this scheme, with this system outside the physical, you will clearly perceive who is incarnating these forces in an environment where they should not anchor. Of course, all of us are channels for all kinds of forces, and we need a lot of clarity about this process, about this process of formation of the right brain center. And I repeat, they are not deductions, not and analysis, not psychological quests. It's a different development for these glands and nervous system to enter a different activity, and so that we may have an experience that is real, an effective experience of this right brain center. This process is taking place also on the planet. So this process of our right brain center that needs to enter into activity at this moment quite clearly, because the development of the new humanity will not take place with the normal mind, will not take place with the concrete mind. It'll be a part of the development, but without the right brain center, which is not physical, without this right brain center being active and building the path, this mind, the way we have it, cannot come out of its place, does not go beyond itself. So it's necessary that these glands, the nervous system, all this may start working, acting with all its potential, so that on the physical plane this may become possible, so that our material, our nervous matter, our gland matter, our secretions to be to to migrate into a less dense plane, so that the brain center and the heart center and the cosmic plexus, but we are focusing more the right brain center today. What we call the chakras, those centers in our etheric body along our spinal cord, that system is gradually being deactivated as this right brain center is activated. This system of chakras, which is active, represents our material life, our current psychological life, all that which is our human and energy process of today. So, to confirm these chakras, which are being deactivated, confirming this in all its structure, which exists and is in place, confirming this would be delaying a whole process that has nothing to do with these chakras. It has to do with centers of energy, but that have nothing to do with this physical plane, but outside the body. This foresees the fusion of the emotions with the mind, the emotional side with the mental side. So you see the care that is needed with all and any and every emotional movement, because the emotional body cannot be repressed, but at the same time, it should learn to work together with the mind. The emotional in this level is not a level, it's not a body that works alone any longer. The emotional body should be controlled to the extent that it can not even manifest itself if the mind is not present. And the mind should not be manifesting itself just as mind without feelings. So we must be quite attentive so that this emotional side and the mental side do not continue to work in an autonomous way. When you perceive that the emotion and the mind are not connected, you stop what you're doing, what you're feeling, unite these two bodies, unite this action of the mind with this action of the feeling. This is a work in the park. This is a work of the beings that are dedicating themselves to this process. All Whenever the mind starts to manifest itself without the participation of all that which you consider your feelings, your human feelings, we are not talking about higher feelings of the soul. We are talking about your human feelings. When your mind is not connected to this feeling, and when this feeling is not controlled, not colored by the most intelligent and soft colors and harmonious colors of your mind, of your mental world, it's up to you to work for this fusion to take place. It's up to you to work for this. So, what what do those who are in the park do? Those who are in the park are consciously working on these fusions, and this is so conscious in the individual. This has been assumed by the individual to such an extent that all that which are their karmic connections that are not included consciously in this work start to receive the radiation of all this. So, in the park, in this state of consciousness, or in this place which Figueira should become one day, in this place or in this state of consciousness, there is no longer any direct relationship with what is old, with is not this. This relationship exists and develops through these ways, these inner ways. So I have to be so much inside this work, I have to be so conscious and imbued in this in knowing what this work is all about, so that I do not allow anybody to work autonomously. Each work body of mine should be working the way I want. So the physical, etheric body, the emotional, astral body, the thinking, deductive, analytical body, all this should be working together. All this should be integrated, because if this really starts to work in an integrated way in practice, a work is needed, because your mind is in a rhythm and your physical body to materialize what is necessary for that mental rhythm to establish here. You know how this physical plane is slower, how much interference exists in this physical plane. You gather this physical interference with the mental interference, and you see that we are stop almost in the regular common life, someone having a state of faith, but not a stable faith, because you see uh, you look at the attitudes of those who do not have faith. So this is a continuous work, and for this we need to be attentive, and we need to know what we are doing in this park. The constitution of current humanity is compatible with a certain current development. But the constitution of humanity is not only for developing this current pattern. The humanity, the human being, has a constitution that will be able in the future to be participating internally, mentally in systems and processes that are not only planetary in nature, not only human. And we need to recognize these processes, and we need to experience these processes. Today, someone was telling me that at a certain point in their life, they saw two great lights, and they were clearly not stars, because when you see these lights which look like stars, we see they are closer. They are halfway. They are closer to us. We have to have already a psychic development, a mental development, and also have a psychological quality that may allow us to have these contacts, and so that this may not be just a passing contact, that is a fleeting contact. We see these lights, and of course, they create an inner effect. This is daily life, it happens continuously. This is normal. There are thousands and thousands of vessels around the earth. So there is in potential for us to be in communication, in work, in collaboration. Thousands and thousands of light like these, which in a certain dimension or plane, they manifest themselves and we see as stars, as lights. This is working with us continuously in our inner bodies and our functioning. Our structure does not allow us to be aware of this, does not allow us to be as elements of this work, elements in which this work is carried out, but so that we may be really mingling with this. Do you perceive the development that should happen? If there are thousands and thousands of lights or vessels or brothers and sisters, whatever way you prefer to call them, if there are thousands permanently working on earth, and if our constitution allows us to have this as an experienced life, as a reality, permanently experienced, what do we need for us to start realizing this? If our glands and if our nervous system should allow this, they should allow this according to what happens in the head when this merges, according to the radiation of the thought that is there, or according to what our life is, that which is our main concerns and objectives in our life. According to the book Patterns of Behavior of the New Humanity, and according to the book The Dwelling of the Legion, the masculine and feminine within us must be purified so that the subtler part or nobler part of these polarities may manifest, so that the masculine and feminine in us may not be only what it is today, but the masculine and feminine in us may liberate its their higher part, because very few among us know the higher part of the masculine part polarity. To us, masculine polarity is procreation. For us, we do not know the higher part of this polarity, just as we do not know the higher polarity part of the feminine polarity. We would have to develop all these polarities, because feminine polarity we identify as a woman on the physical plane, or the masculine polarity we identify with a man on the physical plane. These polarities have nothing to do with the, the physical gender. These polarities exist in us, balanced or one or the other more prominent, independently of our physical body. So these glands, pituitary and pineal glands, they need to have where they may apply the higher side of their secretions, so that these polarities, the masculine and feminine polarities, may start manifesting themselves in other higher aspects. This feminine polarity, for example, which all of us have together with the other one, this polarity within this process of the right conscious, this is a capacity for sacrifice, a capacity for obedience to the laws, which we have no idea whatsoever. So to us, the feminine polarity is so many things that we do not need to repeat, but this capacity for this polarity to gather its forces in an obedient way before a higher law, in order to allow itself to be fulfilled within this higher law, which we call sacrifice, and this capacity of this for this polarity to intuit, to intuit. Intuit means not to think. This feminine capacity in us is not in certain areas of the physical body. This feminine polarity in this stage of our evolution, this is found in our intuitive level. So you need really to love this intuition. You need to see this intuition. You need to be really believing in this situation, so that this feminine polarity may start to expand and become fulfilled, and so that you may become an intuitive being. And you becoming intuitive, you means you use your concrete mind, your thought, in a very controlled way, well directed way. But for this, you need to be lucid, active in your feminine polarity. In other words, you must be quite at ease on this intuitive plane. This feminine polarity is quite susceptible to desires. So this feminine polarity does not only have characteristics as this one, intuitive characteristics that lead you not to think when it is on an intuitive plane, not when you consider it in some area or organ of your being, then it ends. Then, in that case, you are a mother, you are a woman. We are talking about the polarity in the intuitive level. So, this is for those who are in bodies of one of the two sexes. It has nothing to do with sex in the body. So this feminine polarity should expand. And just as it has this possibility to liberate you from thinking, although this polarity has the possibility to allow itself to be led by things and actions and topics that a higher consciousness has transcended. So a work is necessary for this feminine energy polarity. The masculine polarity, which we all have, is the one that exposes us to all that which we call physical attractions. When a woman has a physical attraction, that physical attraction is not in the feminine polarity in her. It is in the masculine polarity, in them, in her. So through desire, through that which attracts, we can see to what extent our masculine polarity is active and to what extent our masculine polarity has to be perfected. In one or the other polarity, whether one or the other polarity is prevailing, we can strengthen both aspects. So we would have not to delude ourselves with our physical situation, with the polarity that our physical body is manifesting in this incarnation. And we have to deal with both polarities in the physical body where we are. So we are not neither men or women in reality. We have both polarities and we need to work on them. We need to learn how to liberate ourselves from this appearance that we have a polarity because of physical body, because in the physical body we have the apparent physical or apparent masculine or apparent feminine polarity. But in the soul, in the monad where this process is taking place, the situation may not be the same. A monad or a soul may have incarnated in a physical, in a masculine or feminine body, but on their level they may be working a different polarity, or they may be working on the polarity that has nothing to do with the physical gender. So that it may happen that my monad or my soul may be doing a work to expand the masculine polarity in a being, and in that moment it may be incarnated in a feminine body. So then, in that case, a certain availability is needed to penetrate this system, to consider these systems, to really be open to be in this system with a certain degree of freedom. For this, it's necessary that we may have to live in this world a quite neutral attitude in the face of what happens. And all this process of functions of men and women in life and in the reproduction of the species will be reduced to the minimum necessary. and only those who are really with the task of procreating would experience those things. And those who do not have the task of procreation should be there as a masculine or feminine being, or a feminine masculine being, who must have both polarities as active as possible on the levels that each one of them is active, regardless of their physical polarity, so that we may become harmonious. We may become harmonious because behind this there is a great need for harmony. As long as one of the polarities in our consciousness is more prominent than the other, regardless of in the physical body, they may be in order, so to say. But if in the consciousness one is more prominent than the other, this prevents us from being harmonious. This prevents us from being in a harmonious life, experiencing a harmonious life. The thermometer to see how the progress of all this energy, speaking energy wise as consciousness, is our relationship here. So you see how your relationship is here, or what kind of relationship you develop here. This is the thermometer for you to see if this is balanced, if this is harmonized, united. You see, we are talking about the physical body. We are talking about men and women of the physical body, because feminism and macho philosophy are not things we consider. We must have both polarities taking care of each other, and we should be take care of both with the same sense of responsibility in these times, so that we may be harmonious, so that we may be harmonious. Here there is a sentence that we have extracted from one of the books, that says, those who want to change the human nature and terrestrial nature, before anything else, they should accept it. If you do not, if you did not, if you have not accepted your nature, nature in us should be quite processed and perfected. If you haven't accepted your human nature, the terrestrial nature of the world, if you haven't accepted it, you will not be able to change anything, neither in you nor in the world that you want to transform. In our evolutionary stage, the brain as an organ, the brain as a part of our being, cannot manage to perceive what we are. The brain cannot do it. The brain, however lucid it is, however healthy it is, however orderly it is, this brain has no capacity to distinguish where it is. You know what they use it, they use of the brain. This brain should not say anything to you about yourself or about life, because it'll take everything to the material plane, because the brain is a mental capacity. And our brain, in this human brain that we have today, there is all still the animal side. The animal that we have been is still quite present in our brain. Our brain literally is an animal brain. What happens there, how it develops, how it acts, how it influences, this needs a different light. This needs a different light. These two glands, the pineal gland and pituitary gland, in their mysterious activity, there is subtle secretions that will develop and penetrate the brain so that it may achieve to transcend this level, this animal level, come in common with the animal kingdom, that does not allow the brain to have higher understanding. So you see that with the brain, we have to be quite attentive, even when it is working well, even when we have a brain with which we can on which we can count for certain things. We really appeal to the brain. We resort to the brain. We can count on the brain, but we have to be very careful in this evolutionary work of the park, in this evolutionary work of these gatherings of pioneers. We have to be quite careful to use this brain, but we should know how to distinguish what is a secretion of its, what are certain thoughts that we produce that are true brain secretions in a more subtle way, and distinguish this from a higher idea, an idea that we may have about something. And probably when our feminine aspect is not, when it's not very active, when it's calm because of a masculine attitude, we remain completely uh, affected by what the brain does. And between what the brain produces and the higher mind produces, we can never distinguish, almost never. So, this is a field that we should recognize as a work field that is quite up to date to us, quite needed and demanding. Leaving all this old part aside, the part of the mind, the brain, all that old activity of ours, to enter our right brain center activity that should be developed now in this right brain center, to attract this, to call this to a plane of reality. Our capacity to acquire knowledge in the right brain is quite balanced with our creative capacity. So, in the right brain center, there is not such a thing as wanting to do something, to have a lot of creativity, and not to have the possibility to acquire knowledge for that, not having the possibility to put that into practice. This is solved in the right brain center. It's not a material thing. So, this capacity of yours, this faculty to have knowledge to, and at the same time to create based on this knowledge, which is something that outside the right brain system is a struggle. And how many things we know but we cannot create. So in order for our knowledge be to come into a plane of manifestation, for this to happen even on in the material plane, even on the physical action, material action, we need the right brain center to be active. It is with the right brain center active that your knowledge will be in a proportional way to your capacity to put things into practice. So there will no longer be frustrated people. This word frustration is a word of today, an old word, because with the right brain system, there is not such a thing. The right brain center does not absorb knowledge that you cannot apply. So, with the development of this right brain center, which is a capacity for us to have things that we can create and concretize, all our analytical activity of conscious thought with the radiation of the right brain center, this capacity to analyze will go down into the subconscious. It'll come out of our field of activity because analysis is an application of what we know. Otherwise, without the application of what you know, you cannot analyze. This will be pushed into the subconscious because this is no longer useful. You will not reach anything through analysis because this is a material thing, a concrete thing. You can only enter analysis of what you know. In an analysis, you will reach conclusions, but you'll not reach new things in analysis. You only reach the new without thinking, without employing the mind for this or the brain for this. Then you will reach what is new. This right brain center, as it develops, as it is established, it will push your capacity of analysis to your subconscious. Even if you want to analyze, you will not be able to find the means. And this is already giving signals in some pioneers. Some pioneers are striving to work and still in the old system, in analyzing, investigating from this analytical point of view. But many pioneers are having difficulty in this. And many who still do not have the feminine polarity very close think that this is a mental deficiency and they go and try to go under treatment. You perceive where you can enter when this, within the feminine energy, within our moments of intuition, we will see that this is the correct thing. But while you are losing energy to analyze, if you're wasting energy to enter this analytical process, you need to be open to the other aspect, to that feminine side of yours, this intuitive side of yours. You must be open to this so that you do not stay in a situation of thinking that you are oblivious. Maybe your nature is leading you to forget things in you, and then you become forgetful. But physically, this may enter unhealthy process, physically speaking, because forgetful physically may mean certain functions that are not activated. In short, all this in this park would be quite evident to all, so that we may help one another to be before these new situations and new things, this new way of functioning, this new perception, this new work of intuition that should be through the right brain center, not only the mind, we should cultivate a little. This happens, enters into activity as our ego side stops being in control. There is a stage when we have to deny the ego. There is a moment when we do not understand how the circumstances defy the ego, because either our ego disappears or we need a new incarnation to take new steps. Because in this stage, the analytical mind, the human mind, the flesh brain is very active, and all this is the most material part of the ego. So all that which happens to shake the ego. There are people who say, my soul said, and it's the ego that is saying the screaming, and they think it's the soul. This should be shaken. This should start to be shaken. The inner self knows the way how to shake this ego, and each one has their ego quite shaken according to what the higher self understands as a way to shake it. In general, it's what aches the most in us. It's the point of the greatest disillusionment. That's where the ego starts to be worked and processed. Really worked, not worked or processed the way we say it is. When you think that you have worked your ego and your ego is disciplined, that's where the work on the ego, but coming from up, from above. And the work from above on the ego is the opposite of what the ego expects and wants in its most delicate and sensitive point, in its most intimate point. So if you follow the spiritual path, if you're sincere and do not understand certain things that happen to you, take a look if that is not happening to shake your ego. Without the ego shaken, there is no beginning to these things. Without the ego being shaken, the mind does not surrender. Without the ego shaken, this feminine process on the intuitive level has no energy. This stays in the normal intuition, but without anything that really indicates to the individual that new stages, higher stages are coming, because this is what intuition is here for. Well, I think that this topic has a lot to be developed. We have a lot to work on us, and let's go ahead. Let's move on.